thing where it is a public road on Beaver Channel Parkway that goes up to the front gate of the Clinton Corn Processing Company. If I slip up and call it ADM, it's because that's what it's called now today. At the time it was Clinton Corn Processing, or maybe it was Standard Brands even, I don't know. They've had different names.
Switched.
So if I screw up and call it ADM, I mean ADM was not involved in this. This was pre-ADM, it was
Okay.
Clinton Corn, okay?
Okay.
So Beaver Channel Parkway going up into that main gate is a public street. There is private property on either side of it, including railroad tracks on one side that is definitely private property. And so you have an intersection where the road ends and becomes the private property of Clinton Corn. Where is the sidewalk there? Where is the crosswalk there? Because do you know that it is illegal for you to go out here in front of this library and just walk straight across the street in the middle of the block? That's jaywalking. You have to go to the sidewalk and cross at the lateral projections of the sidewalk in order to legally cross the street and have the right-of-way as a pedestrian. So where's the sidewalk and the crosswalks on Beaver Channel Parkway? How can you legally walk across the crosswalk and block people from being able to turn into the plant to go to their jobs? So we had to identify where's private property lines, where is a crosswalk if there is one. And so they were blaming the police department because we were telling them you cannot block the roadway. You're out in the middle of the street, you have to let these people through, and it became the police department's fault because we weren't enforcing their rights to strike. When it's like, I gotta enforce the law. And the law is the vehicle has the right of way. You're not in an intersection. You're not in a marked crosswalk. How can I stop them when they're in the right of way? And if you get hit, it's your fault. You shouldn't be out in front of the car. And that became the police department's fault. So it became an increasingly adversarial situation. And it made it such that when you were on a day off, or your shift was over for the day, or you were due to go in later that night, we had to almost live by our telephones. There was no such thing as pagers and cell phones in 1979. You had to be at home and available to hear the phone call, because if things got bad and they were having problems with the strikers at the gates of Clinton Corn and they needed more help, we had to be available to answer the call and run right now. It's now my ex-wife. My wife at the time had a job, and I remember there were a couple of occasions where I had to call to her place of employment and tell her, I've just been called into work, you got to get home and take care of the kids, I'm on my way. We had young kids that could not be left at home. And fortunately she had an employer that understood that, and yeah, you got to call, go home. And fortunately her place of employment was just a few blocks from the house, so by the time I had the uniform on and was ready to go, she was pulling in the driveway. I even had a vacation scheduled that summer, the end of September of 1979. I was going with 5 other men to a fishing trip in northern Ontario, Canada. And it was questionable whether I was going to get to go. And one of the reasons for that is one of the other men on that fishing trip was also a police officer in Clinton. And to make it even more interesting, one of the other men, in fact the one that we took his pickup truck and we all rode in it up there, his club cab pickup truck, was one of the union members that was the subject of Bring Our Members Back. And he was my wife's uncle. And so here's like, what are we going to do, guys? Lyle and I may not be able to go. Well, they did let us go. The department let us both go. But it was not all that assured from August 1st until the end of September that we were going to get to go. on a trip that we had planned for months, and that would have canceled the other Ford men also. So that's just one of the things, how it would have personally affect you.
Yeah.
You were tied to your phone even on your days off, because you knew that when those guys that were on duty called and wanted help, that they needed you, that they were counting on you to show up. Just like the day that you're working and you need help and you're calling on them, you expect them to be available to come and show up too. Because there was nobody else we were going to call on to come and help us.
So at the strike, or at the time of the strike, where would you say your sympathies lied?
At what point in the strike?
I don't know if it changed throughout the strike. Maybe detail
Obviously,
that. Yeah.
it changed. As I stated before about my connections with unions, on August 1st of 1979, I thought I was a union member. I can tell you when it began to change, and that is when I started seeing the people that were brought in to support the union at some of their rallies. And that would be specifically people like Angela Davis. Have you heard that name?
I have.
And what was Angela Davis?
She came in to speak to the union members. Correct?
Yes.
She was.
And she was a member of what political party? She was a member of the Communist Party and was a vice presidential candidate.
I knew that. Yeah.
Why wouldn't you say that?
Well, I forgot until you said it. I did read that.
Okay. So here is a union being rallied behind a communist. What? And then they also had an attorney that worked for legal aid. His name was Tom Jager.
And he was also.
And would you care to guess what party he was registered with as a political party? It was a communist. So they're getting legal advice now from the communists. And they also had a chaplain, the name of Reverend Gil Dawes, who spent a lot of time in South America where he learned the Latin American liberation theology. And he was their chaplain and spiritual guidance. His church, the Methodist Church in Comanche, experienced a tremendous loss in membership of people that were not agreeing what he was doing and supporting the union. And they did not make up for the loss in membership with increased membership from the union members. And in fact, what union members did show up were of course unemployed. They were on strike. And so they didn't have a lot of money to financially support the church with their tithes and offerings. So it led to a tremendous divide within a very prominent, a very good, long-term Methodist church in the city of Comanche. Gil Dawes was nothing but, wait a minute, what church did I say? Did I say it was St. Mark's Methodist?
St. Matthew's.
Did I say Matthews?
I
Delete that. It's always St. Mark's. It's St. Mark's Methodist in Comanche. Okay. Delete that. I don't even think there is a St. Methodist in Comanche. Delete.
Les, were you there on the for the Labor Day riots?
Yes.
Okay. Can you talk about that?
I don't remember a whole lot of particulars of the Labor Day riots. There was a lot of people that were in from out of town, labor members, labor sympathizers that were from out of town that were brought in. It was, as I recall, the Labor Day riot was called as a major, we call it riot now, the Labor Day rally was what it was billed as, was bringing labor from as wide an area as they could to bring as many people as you can to march down on the plant and show support for the local, union. And so you brought in people that, of course, had no connection to Clinton and didn't care what happened. They didn't care if they did things that were not going to be taken well by the general public. One of the things I can remember, and I don't know for a fact that it was at the Labor Day rally, but I know in other rallies, I did not personally find them, but I saw where an officer had picked up what's called a caltrap or a jackrock. You can do some research and find out what those are. That is spelled C-A-L-T-R-O-P, also known as jackrocks. They're an anti-personnel device that if you step on it, it's a nail that no matter which way it lands, the nail is pointing up and it'll poke you in the foot. It's also very effective on a pneumatic tire. And we found jackrocks. Who threw them? I don't know. I do not allege that it was any Local 6 Clinton, Iowa-based union member. If in fact they did come from people that were there to support the strike and participate in the rally, I believe they came from people outside of Clinton.
Okay.
What else do you want to know? Like I say, I don't know. I don't recall specifically that was found on September 1, or this whatever the date was, the Labor Day rally. But I do know on some of the other rallies, and one of the other rallies, that's the kind of thing we were finding. And in some of the rallies, and it may have been the Labor Day rally, there were people standing alongside the road that were kicking the sides of vehicles as they went by, that were hidden back in the crowds, throwing rocks at the vehicles as they went by, of the people that were trying to drive in on a public street to get to their job. And the union that was trying to intimidate them and prevent them from going to work. And the police department caught in the middle of both.
Yeah.
Which side's the winning side in that? But we were accused of taking sides.
So can you talk about that a little bit? The perception of the police during that time. What was community policing like? You know, for someone like you who was on patrol, how frequently did you see, I guess, the blowback from all this strife that was going on?
Well, of course, we'd see it every day where it was our job to have to go down throughout the shift. As I recall, we'd have to send somebody down there all day long, and especially at shift changes. We would have to have 2 officers in a squad car at the main gate and the South Clinton gate, watching what was happening and being able to report back and say, send the reinforcements, we got problems here. We need to get this street opened up again. One of the things that I remember too, and you'll probably hear people talk about, is the union was complaining that they were not getting any support from the community. They were after the city to come out and say something, we support Local 6. They were after the business community, the Chamber of Commerce, and whoever to come out and say we support Local 6. And it became a thing like, if you won't support us, we're not going to support you. We're not going to shop in your stores. Guess what happens when stores don't get enough sales to pay the bills? And then you complain, where are the commercial opportunities in Clinton? Well, they left because you wouldn't support them. You would say, we're not going to buy our cars here, we're not going to buy our appliances here, we're not going to buy our clothes here, we're going to go to Davenport because you won't support us in this fight. We're not going to support you. Well, that's sort of like, pick which foot you want to shoot. You want to shoot your left foot or you want to shoot your right foot? Pick one. But that's what happened. And then you look at, let's fast forward past 1980. Strike's over.
Mhm.
The union lost a I don't know if they lost a decertification vote. How do you say that? They held this vote to decertify the union, and the union lost. And it was atrocious, the numbers that they lost by. Okay? So the strike's over. And you got a bunch of people that had good paying jobs at ADM that are now unemployed.
Mhm.
And they're not able to make house payments. In fact, they've been struggling for the last year that they were on strike to make their house payments. And so they're defaulting. And what's happening to home prices then? Add to that what's happening in the national economy at about the same time. And at that time, by the summer of 1980, by definitely the fall of 1980, interest rates, if you could find a place that would loan you money to buy a home, interest rates were in double-digit ranges. In fact, I bought a home in 1980 and paid 13.5% interest, and that's the best I could get. Now look at that compared to what you can find today. I think you can find a home loan today in the range of 3.5 to 3.75%.
Mhm.
But at that time, inflation was such on the national scale that it was running 13.5% or higher for a residential loan in Clinton, Iowa.
Mhm.
And the good paying jobs to support that kind of thing were now gone. So a lot of homes ended up on the market, which drove down the home prices. A lot of businesses folded and closed. You won't support us, we're not going to support you. And I don't think we've recovered yet to this day.
Yeah.
To this day, this community is still recovering. We have not ever climbed back up to the top of the hill.
And you would say that is all directly linked to the strike?
No,
No?
it's not all directly related to it. Because, like I explained, a lot of it was out of our control. On a national level, what was
Mhm.
happening with inflation. The Local 6 strike did not cause the double-digit interest rates.
Mhm. But it didn't help.
But it didn't help that it occurred at the same time. So, when did I change? When did I no longer feel like I was a union sympathizer? It sure didn't help to see Angela Davis in Clinton rallying the union members. It didn't help to see Tom Jager, a registered communist, working for and supporting the stuff that was going on for a strike that was called for. What purpose yet? We still haven't decided what was the strike for.
Mhm.
What were they striking for on August 1, 1979? What was their demand? Okay? And then have Gil Dawes down there on a regular basis agitating. And he's a socialist and is destroying a Christian church in Comanche.
Mhm.
I don't think I can be a union supporter.
Do you feel like
I became a registered conservative in the spring of 1980.
because of that? Do you feel
And
like
I was thrown out of my mom and dad's house
because of it?
because we were arguing over whether the union could be on strike or not, and whether that was a legal strike. And my dad being a union supporter and me trying to explain to him how, as a police officer, I can't go down there and stop the cars that are trying to get in and support the union. And our discussion got heated enough that he told me I could leave.
Do you feel like other police officers on the department at the time felt the same way, that their sympathies changed too?
I'm not going to speak for other officers, for
Okay.
other people's. For other people, that's their own personal philosophies and opinions, and I do not propose to speak for them.
Les, do you think